Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown as we go through the three key matchups for the New York Giants in Sunday's road game against the Denver Broncos. I'm Paul Dottino. Well, these two teams are meeting at a very interesting time in the schedule. If you had gone back just 3 weeks ago, it probably would have been a much less interesting game. But what's happened since that time? Well, the Broncos have continued to win. They're a 4-2 team and do have the league's number one rated defense. And they are very dominant when getting after the quarterback. On the other side, the Giants have had an infusion of excitement and thrills from rookies Jaxson and Cam Skattebo. They've won two of their last three games. They have injected life and oxygen into their season, and they are coming off of a huge upset over the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who the week prior got beaten by these same Denver Broncos. Okay, so let's go through the state of both teams, and then we will break down the three key matchups to watch if you're the Giants and you're going to pull off this upset. Some interesting facts and figures as we go through some of the key injuries and key elements to this game. Now, first of all, let's talk about some of the key injuries. For the Giants, it does not look very good as we go into Friday morning's practice and take a look at what's going on with Darius Slayton. Slayton missed last week's game with a hamstring, has not been able to do anything at practice to this point this week. So one would think that little Jordan Humphrey, who had a really nice game against the Eagles, is going to be in line for his second straight activation. He had 4 catches for 55 yards, including a nice 34-yard reception early in the game to get the Giants' offense moving. Another key injury to one of their offensive starters, John Michael Schmitz, their center. Concussion protocol. Hard to say when he will be allowed back by the NFL doctors. So Adam Schlottman, who according to the Giants coaches did a good job when he had to come in for JMS against Philadelphia, is in line to be the starter against Denver. Very important, again, against a potent Denver pass rush. Now, those were two of the very important offensive players who have not participated during the early portion of the week in practice. On defense, DJ Davidson has himself a sore knee. He is one of the Giants in that defensive tackle rotation. At this point, he looks very, very iffy. Now, again, he's in there mostly for depth purposes as part of the rotation. He is not a starter. The Giants have had a number of other players who were limited at practice during the early portion of the week, but I would say it looks more than likely that those guys will be able to do something on Sunday. So we won't go there at this moment. Now, in talking about the Giants, it may surprise you, and we talked about this a little bit last week, that most of the key categories for the Giants offensively are middle of the pack, but they've really done themselves in with inopportune giveaways and penalties. The Giants right now are still at a -3 in turnover ratio, and they have drawn 62 penalty flags this season, tied for the second most in the league. I think it is important to note that the Denver Broncos also have a lot of penalty problems. They have drawn 60 penalty flags, tied for fourth most in the league. And as I've said on this channel and other channels during the week, you would hate to see this game decided by a penalty flag. But these are two teams very apt to get the officials to throw that yellow laundry onto the field. Some key items to understand about the Giants. Well, it's all been about the resurgence of this Giants offense behind those two rookies. First round quarterback Jaxson, fourth round running back Cam Skattebo. Jaxson Dart has the highest scramble percentage of any quarterback this season at nearly 14% of the time. Consequently, he has run for 15 scrambles, resulting in 116 yards. Remember, he's only started the Giants' last 3 games since he came in to replace Russell Wilson. Dart is the third quarterback since 1950 to have at least 50 yards rushing in each of his first 3 career starts. The others, Philadelphia's Jalen Hurts in 2020 and Baltimore's Lamar Jackson in 2018. You get the picture here? Dart's really done an awful lot to turn things around for the Giants. Cam Skattebo, well, he's done a whole bunch of good things too for this team. You recall that Tyrone Tracy had gone down 3 games ago because of an injured shoulder. Now, he did come back and play some reps in last week's game against Philly. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. But Skattebo has 425 scrimmage yards right now, and that ranks 7th amongst all NFL players since week 3. Again, that number is only since week 3. Remember, first couple of weeks of the season, he did not do much. In fact, in his NFL debut, 2 carries for -3 rushing yards against the Washington Commanders. So he was not really a significant part of what the Giants were doing at that time. I also want to throw in a couple of other interesting Giants notes. Since week 4, again, 4, 5, and 6, that's the last 3 games, the Giants are averaging over 155 rushing yards per game. Now, Jaxson Dart is getting about 1/3 of those yards because of his legs. During that same time period, the Giants are at over 51% conversions on 3rd down. You can't deny the fact that Dart's legs have had a great deal to do with that number too. Both of those figures over that duration rank the Giants in the top 4 of NFL offenses. So do you see how these 2 rookies have really changed the complexion of the Giants' offensive effectiveness? On the flip side, the Giants and Broncos have 2 of the most potent defenses in the league, but I want to mention this one number in particular. The Giants have three players, and this has been the case basically for most of the season, with at least 20 quarterback pressures this year. Abdul Carter leads the way with 26. Brian Burns has 22. Kayvon Thibodeau has 20. Broncos with Nick Bonito with 34, Jonathan Cooper with 26, and Zach Allen with 20. These 2 teams, well, there's only one other team, the Seattle Seahawks, who have at least 3 players with a minimum of 20 quarterback pressures on the season. So while that is a very big highlight for the Giants, there's no doubt about that. Well, the Broncos being the number 1 defense in the NFL, they've got exactly what they need to do to kind of balance that scale. I want to say since week 4, again, I keep doing this because the Giants have really been a different team since that time. The defense has allowed only 28+% of touchdown conversions inside the red zone. That's the lowest in the National Football League. They've been forcing an awful lot of field goals. Again, since that time, Giants giving up just over 20 points a game. On the season, they have really been better defensively than maybe some of the metrics indicate. But since week 4, they're 7th best in the NFL at allowing just a little over 20 points per ball game. And since that time, the Giants have done a better job of ripping the ball out. They have 4 takeaways, which ties for the 7th most in the NFL over this 3-game span. Now, on the other side of the ledger, despite the fact that so many of these things have gone well, remember, Dexter Lawrence did not play during the preseason, and we told you it was going to take him at least a month to kind of get it going. Well, he's now gone 11 straight games. If you span it back into last season, that would be since week 8 of 2024 when he injured his elbow. It's 11 straight games without a sack for Dexter Lawrence. So you can be sure Sexy Dexy's going to be hungry to get one this week against the Broncos. We will talk more about that particular aspect of this game in just a little bit. Let's get into it about the Denver Broncos. As far as their significant injuries coming into Friday's practice, Jonah Ellis, outside linebacker with a shoulder injury, has not worked during the early part of the week, but he is not a significant part of what they're doing defensively. But that's it in terms of guys who have not worked. Everybody else has either worked with a sore bump and bruise or been limited with a sore bump and bruise. The one limited guy I do want to mention is linebacker Dre Greenlaw, the former San Francisco 49er, who signed with the Broncos during the offseason. He has not played this year because of a quad. Well, they put the practice activation designation on him, and he has been limited during the course of the week. Now, there is a chance, according to Vance Joseph, their defensive coordinator, that he will see part-time duty. Why is that significant? Well, I'll make it really simple for you. He's one of the best coverage linebackers in the league when he is healthy. Again, this is a quad injury we're talking about that has forced him to miss the first 6 games of the season. If Greenlaw gets back in there, it is a big boost for a Denver Broncos defense that has been dominant this season, but has an Achilles heel, and that is their linebackers' pass coverage. Greenlaw is the guy who is supposed to tighten that down. We'll see if he is back on the field this week against the Giants, or the Broncos are forced to wait for another day. All right, let's talk a little bit about the state of the Broncos. We just gave you a brief look at their injury report for the season. They are 4-2. Their only 2 losses came in weeks 2 and 3 against the Colts, 29-28, and against the Chargers, 23-20. Both games on the road, and both games decided by last-second field goals. So they have been about as close to perfect as you could be. Now, it does bear mentioning that they're coming off a phenomenal defensive effort against the Jets, but in a game that was really a snoozer, they went over to London and prevailed 13-11. Now, the game was an incredible defensive battle. Jets played well defensively, but Broncos offense really not clicking. In fact, the previous week when they upset the Philadelphia Eagles, they won 21-17. So that's a combined 34 points over the last 2 weeks of the season. And a lot of folks in Denver are a bit concerned that their offense has been too conservative. In fact, the coaching staff talked about the fact that maybe they were leaning on their defense a little too much against the offensively challenged Jets and did not necessarily open up the reins on their own offense. It remains to be seen how the Broncos decide to approach this game against the Giants, who are a bit different team than they used to be offensively. Again, we told you what's happened over the last 3 weeks as they've been able to move the ball better and create some explosive plays. The Broncos, well, let's just start with their highlights because there's no sense in even going elsewhere to begin this conversation. Number one defense in the NFL in fewest yards allowed per play at just over 4.25. First in the NFL with 30 sacks through 6 games. They are on an historic pace. First in the league with 57 quarterback hits. Number one in the league in opponents' third down percentage at just over 27%. And leading the NFL in opponents' red zone percentage at just under 29%. Yes, they have been dominant. They have 12 players on their defense that have had at least part of a sack this season. It has been the NFL sack leader, Nick Bonitto, outside linebacker, who has rocked his way through opponents' pass protections. We'll talk about him a little bit more in our key matchups to watch in just a bit. We also should note that Patrick Surtain was last year's NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's not slowing down one bit. He looks like he wants to retain the crown this season, allowing 17 catches on 28 targets for only 177 yards and no touchdowns. And let's not forget that Zach Allen, defensive end, has also had a terrific season, despite the fact that as far as sacks are concerned, he only has 2.5. He has really been rocking things because he is tied with Bonitto atop the NFL charts with 16 quarterback hits. So he is affecting things against passers, even though he is not necessarily finished with sacks. And if that sounds familiar, well, what did I tell you about pressures? Kayvon Thibodeau and, of course, Abdul Carter, each over 20 pressures apiece this year. Thibodeau with 2.5 sacks, Carter with only half a sack. Defensive coordinators will tell you pressures and hits are almost as effective and sometimes even better than sacks, because sometimes a pressure or a hit can force a turnover, where a sack is a sack unless there's a forced fumble attached to it. So we got that defensive stuff out of the way immediately when talking about the Broncos, because there's no sense in dwelling on their offense. We will simply mention for the season they're allowing only 16 points a game. Again, they've been dynamite. 22 points a game offensively, which is tied for 20th in the NFL. They're 24th in third down percentage at about 37%. 337 yards a game, that ranks 15th. Yards rushing, 7th in the league at 130. Yards passing, over 206. That ranks 16th. Red zone, they are 12th in the NFL at 65%. And yes, Bo Nix is a very cerebral quarterback. He is a guy who does not like to be forced into taking risks, nor does he like to be forced into making mistakes. So he has thrown an awful lot of short passes, quick strikes, managing the game, and there's nothing wrong with that. They rely on their defense. They want their defense to control the flow and the tempo, and this way their offense simply doesn't have to do a whole lot of risk-taking to win their football games. Here we go with our 3 significant key matchups to watch if you're the Giants. Now, I'm going to save Nick Bonitto to the third one here, if only because he's just so obvious. We're going to go with Broncos left guard Alex Palczewski in his second NFL season, going up against Dexter Lawrence, with also the possibility that either Abdul Carter or Kayvon Thibodeau will be blitzing into the A gap or the B gap on that side of the defense. But we all know that a guard and a center have to double team Dexter Lawrence on virtually every play. Now, the Broncos have a couple choices here. They can either use Palczewski at left guard to be part of a double team if they want to with center Luke Wattenberg. They could do that. Or they've got the opportunity to use their other guard, and that would be Quinn Minards. And you're going to have to use one guard and your center, obviously, to double team Dexter, and that's going to do something to free up one of the Giants' pass rushers in a one-on-one situation. Now, the thing about Palczewski, last year he had 3 starts at right tackle. He also gets often used as the jumbo package tight end. He came out of Illinois last year as an undrafted rookie free agent, actually in 2023, and spent the season on IR, and then actually played in 2024. He was mostly a right guard at Illinois, all right, but he did play a total of 3 positions during his time in college. He is their 3rd string center. Ben Powers is out with injury. Matthew Pert, the former Giant, who played last week, did not look good against the Jets. He was a tackle by trade. They had him in there at guard. Well, he was injured in the game, so he's also out. So the Broncos are down to their 3rd string left guard. The scouting report on Palczewski is a bit sloppy in pass protection. You can bull rush him, and he does tend to lose his balance. These are things against a Giants' strong front 7 that they're going to want to exploit. So think about his matchup, very important, against the Giants' difficult front 7. Now, it's not just about pass pro, it's about J.K. Dobbins, who is one of your more physical backs in the league, gets yards after contact, bullies his way forward. Dobbins had his best game of the season, his only 100-yarder against Cincinnati, 16 carries for 101 yards for the season. Over 440 yards, ranking 7th in the NFL, averaging just under 5 yards a carry, which ranks 11th among running backs in the National Football League. And he does have 4 rushing touchdowns and a long this season of 41 yards. Dobbins is a brute force. The entire game plan of the Broncos offensively, after the defense controls the game, is to allow Dobbins to grind out good yardage on 1st or 2nd down so that they don't have to take risks on 3rd down and can simply manage game flow there that has already been set up by their defensive side of the ball. So if the Giants can take advantage of penetrating against the interior of the Broncos line, control Dobbins on the early downs, and of course then get after the passer later on, it will make their lives so much easier. We're going to go with key matchup number 2 being interior linebacker Alex Singleton against, and this is a little bit vague, it's going to be against whoever the Giants decide to use out of the backfield as their pass-catching running back. Will it be Cam Skattebo, or could Tyrone Tracy get a significant amount of snaps this week? Coming off of that injured shoulder, he was limited last week and did not see very many reps. But Tracy, with his wide receiver skills, could be very useful here because the one bruise, and we told you about this earlier when we spoke about Dre Greenlaw, now a terrific pass defending linebacker. Well, the one bruise in this dynamite Broncos defense is their pass coverage by the linebacking unit. They don't do well. Saquon Barkley ran a wheel route out of the backfield and caught a 47-yard catch and run touchdown pass against the Broncos 2 weeks ago because he was isolated against Singleton, who could not catch up to him and cover him. So if you're the Giants, you look at that linebacking core and their edge guys, their outside guys. We mentioned Benito before. Obviously, he's interested in getting to the quarterback. They're also looking on the other side at Jonathan Cooper. He's interested in getting to the quarterback. But pass coverage is not a forte of their outside backers. And that is a big deal because now Singleton is the guy in the middle. He's in the top 12 in the NFL in tackles. That's fine. But he's also given up the 2nd most receiving yards by any NFL linebacker. That is where you must attack if you are the Giants. And you've got the running backs to do it. Singleton allowing 25 completions on 32 targets for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's clear that the Giants like to throw the ball to Skattebo. We already caught a season-high 6 passes a couple of weeks back. And we know that Tyrone Tracy is very proficient at catching the ball out of the backfield and has some quickness, some jukeability, and speed to turn those plays into long gains. This might be a great time to get Tracy much more involved by attacking the Broncos' linebacking core through the air with the Giants' second-year running back. So we're going to go with Singleton against the two-headed running back pass-catching monster of Tracy and Skattebo. Number 3, it's Nick Bonitto. I told you we'd get to him eventually. How could we not? I just figured we'd save it for last because he has been that dominant against Giants left tackle Andrew Thomas, who has yet to give up a sack this season. Bonitto leads the NFL with 8 sacks, leading the NFL with 34 quarterback pressures, leading the NFL with a pressure percentage of over 26%, and tied for first in the league with his teammate Zach Allen at 16 quarterback hits. Well, it's very obvious, right? Nick Bonitto is the heart and soul of the Broncos pass rush. Now, let's make something very clear. He's usually, not just more often, but most often, lining up on the right outside linebacker spot of this Broncos defense. So there's really no secret. He's got bend, he's got some power. He is going to take on your left tackle almost all day long. Are there chances that he might sometimes move inside on a stunt or move around a little bit? Possibly. But the tendencies for Denver this season, Bonitto, you know where he's going to be. He will line up opposite your left tackle, and it's going to be an incredible battle to watch between Andrew Thomas, who has been as good as he could possibly be this season. Looks like he's off to a sensational start in protecting the blind side of the Giants quarterbacks, specifically Jaxson Dart. Andrew Thomas against Nick Bonitto. Bonitto can be an individual game wrecker, and the Giants hope that Thomas does not allow that to happen. So those are your 3 key matchups to watch for the New York Giants as they try to pull off an upset on Sunday on the road against the Denver Broncos. Remember, the Big Blue Breakdown returns your way on Monday morning when we break down the Giants' offense, defense, and special teams with our Game Balls and Gassers edition of the show. Until then, remember, on Wednesday night at 8 p.m., we're always live Eastern Time with the Big Blue Breakdown Live, and that's when you guys get to be part of the show as you go through the chats, the calls, and the audio calls. I hope to see you then. I'm Paul Dottino for the Big Blue Breakdown here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and Media Network. So long, everybody.